So I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome to the stage Megan Waters, Head of Experience Design at MYOB, and Graham Wetherill, Head of Product at hipages Group. Thank you very much for joining us and welcome.
Thanks for the invite, Luke.
All right, so I suppose, in light of what we've just heard, but before we get into that, perhaps I could ask you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what it is that's your particular focus.
Cool.
So we start with...
Sure. From a customer experience perspective, it's a good topic for us as a company at hipages because it's key to our strategy for this year. We've got a couple of different applications, and we've recognised that the way in which our clients interact with those has a friction point. So our core strategy is bringing those processes together to remove that friction point and enable them to find value quicker and easier across our product suite.
Yeah, excellent. And
cool.
Megan,
what are we focused on?
What your role and what you're focused on?
Yeah, so I'm Head of Experience Design for MYOB, so I kind of keep an eye out across the entirety of our experiences, and I think Darren in the previous session alluded to some of the level of complexity in that, because we kind of look after customers who are just sort of soloists and, are just maybe doing a side gig to, like quite large businesses who are paying, like hundreds, if not thousands of people kind of thing. And so it's that broadness, and also we have people who have essentially built their business around the app and are in it all day, every day, and we have people who pick it up once a month. Yeah, right. Sort of thing. So it's like this breadth across the business is very tricky, and I think we're going to talk to a little bit later where we talk about,
yes,
like who owns the customer experience and all these kinds of things.
Spoiler
well,
it's
alert. Like which customer experience are we talking about? So a lot of my focus is putting in place the right things to help all that to happen. So in fact, I was just talking to team earlier, and it was like, what are the overarching things that I suppose the overarching themes are focused on? And one of them is, for us, it is around help, like as concern at the moment. How do we help people to move from what they know now to what they need to be able to get done what they want to have done? And that's a big thing because of the complexity of a lot of what it is that people want to do. So that's one, and moving it particularly into a digital way. Right. Because we've seen the huge appetite that people have for it, as well as, it meets our business needs as well, and it meets our customers' needs as well. The other one is measurement, and you alluded to it in the earlier thing. Like, how do we measure across the board so we can see what we need to pay attention to, as well as answering specific questions? And the third one is the democratization of design and research. Is a big piece for my personal focus and the team's focus. Like, how do we, while not everyone is a designer, as was mooted around a few years ago, but everyone is making design decisions. How do we help people to make better ones? Yep. So those are probably the three things that I'm focused on at the moment in helping more broadly, as opposed to most of my team are focused very much on sort of that product, if you extend product through into the end-to-end experience. So that's of those different experiences. So that's what a lot of my team are focused on, and then I focus sort of across through that. So okay. Yeah.
So Graham, do you deal with breadth in the same way? Like, do you have to deal with the same kind of challenges there at hipages?
Well, we definitely have different customer types. I would say that we have probably less complexity than MYOB would. But we have from customers that are small customers, sole traders. But one thing that is in common, that they're active in an app. Our primary function is to supply leads at this point in time to tradies, and that action is quite repetitive. But we do have people who have larger businesses that have different needs. They want other people to be able to accept on their behalf, or other levels of interaction. So we need to support those types of businesses as well. Yeah.
Well, what I might head us into now and I suppose I'll share that in our recent, we recently collaborated with Harvard Business Review at Thoughtworks and created an article or report rather, transforming customer experience inside and out. And that research that we did, and I know I've shared it with the two of you, really suggested that, for instance, while in the order of 75% of CX leaders agreed that improving CX is one of their organisation's top strategic priorities, only 15% strongly agree that their organisation has holistic end-to-end CX strategy and approach. And we also saw that there's a huge gap between what CX leaders think is effective in delivering impact and what's actually being adopted. So I wonder, keeping that in mind, how do we go about setting a North Star for CX that our organisations can really get behind, and perhaps how are organisations succeeding in developing this kind of holistic CX mindset and the strength to deliver that kind of vision? What are we seeing?
Yeah, it's tricky. Like, in my world, it's very tricky, right? And what we've found, like, have we nailed it? No. As I said, we talked to this complete broad spectrum of people, but I think we're getting better at it. And in looking at, it's a group of different strategies that you pull together to go, are they all aligning? Are they doing what they need to do? So your product strategy, your what we call our get help strategy or support strategy, and your acquisition kind of strategy, and are they all lining up together for different cohorts and different types of customers to really kind of deliver who you are, like who you want to be as a company, and what that relationship you want to have with your customers, what they need, what you want to be, and finding that intersection between the two. In a very, very sort of micro instance of that, I really want to play with a lot more in terms of, and it sounds bad when you say it, but I think it could be good, which is marketing-driven design. Now, I know, hear me out, don't kind of get too stressed here, but essentially that technique of writing the brief and almost the message and the way you want to market it to people, to go, okay, well, does it, because that often gets you to the heart of what customers want and where they're buying, and then does the experience that falls off, if someone buys that message, does the experience that we pull forward in all aspects really hit to that message?
So there's something in the rigour of going and creating the brief for really what you want to deliver?
Exactly.
Is that,
okay. Exactly. And it always sounds snazzy when, marketing write it. It always sounds so fabulous and you want to buy it. And so, but that piece. So that's my thoughts on it at the moment, where we're doing, because, I'd love to have just one thing that you can put up on walls and it says everything and it's beautiful, but it just doesn't work in our business because of that range. So it's finding the I almost want to go the stripes of it, right, which is a weird way of saying it, but that cut through those varying different target audiences that you've got. So that's my thoughts. Where are you at?
Well, I think, if there are questions around how do you get to having a North Star, I think you've got to have advocates. So, we're fortunate that we've got, I think it'd be fair to say every person who works in product and design is an advocate for the consumer experience. It's also fair to say all the people in our service department are advocates. The people in our sales department have got their perspective on that as well. So we have a lot of advocates, but how do you get that together into one place? And I think it's important to, whenever you're making a business decision, to ask the question, is this in the best interest of the customer? And we're fortunate, we do have a customer experience goal, and that is to be the most trusted partner in the tradie industry. So by having that goal, it allows us to come back to, are we going to build trust by building this thing, building this feature, taking this action, or are we going to erode it? So that's been a real help for us, but it's come about through having multiple advocates across the business. And that comes into hiring as well. How do you hire people that have got the same types of thinking that are customer obsessed? You need to balance that with commerciality as well. You've got to build things that people will buy. Or we're no good to our customer if we don't exist tomorrow. But just having those advocates and getting them together and having the culture which allows that conversation to be had.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I just wanted to, like, I was watching one of the teams were just demoing how they were playing with their roadmaps, and it was delightful to see that what they'd done is the roadmap and the pieces underneath it were all under customer objectives.
Right.
And it just rolled up to this nice, because, we have an overall mission as well as, to help Australian and New Zealand businesses start, succeed and thrive kind of thing. And it's, taking that lens on it, but trying to get down to that more specific and I suppose actionable place is always the tricky bit out of it. So, yeah.
Okay. You talked about advocates, which I find really interesting. When in our research, we've also seen that holding someone accountable for CX isn't always a given, and it's great to have advocates, but actually having somebody who is accountable is also incredibly important. What advice do you think we might have for organisations that might not have yet created clear accountability or clear roles and governance around CX?
Well, for me, I would say, as an organisation, I don't think we have one person who has accountability for CX. I think it's a shared responsibility, a bit like culture. It's everyone's problem. Okay. However, I think having visibility across that is really important, and some of the mechanisms that work well that we have in place are things like a customer committee or a working group related to churn. Like, this is across multiple departments, so we've got visibility of the different things people are doing, the impact on that. Yep. We do have a chief customer officer as well, so that is a role that exists, and it's great to have him there. But it doesn't. It's not like a bureaucracy where every change has to go through. Do we have to have a master plan? But the question for us is more: are we pulling in the same direction? And how can we pull better in the same direction? How do we coordinate across brand and product to make sure their brand colours are accessible? That fits into design principles. So I think those things play a part, and I think it may work where you have one person responsible and accountable, but I think a matrix can also work, so long as you collaborate and share information well. What do you think?
Yeah, it's always, we had and I alluded it to before, I truly don't believe that you can have one person responsible. We've kind of played.
Phew, we agree.
Can you make it work? And particularly in I think maybe in sort of smaller or really tightly focused companies, you could have someone who it's like they just care from one end to the other and pulling all those teams together and making that work. I think it really struggles in larger organisations. Right. The way that we've played it out is that of getting coalitions of people together who have very clear kind of like this. We are trying to achieve that end-to-end experience. We're not always successful, but we know where the places are where it's breaking and how we do it. So, and at different levels. So, like one of the SLTs I sit on, it's very, very much it's product design, tech, support and sales and marketing, kind of there being wrangled together by our GM, and it's because it's as much around the customer experience as it is around the commercial objectives, kind of thing, and that's the intent. We also have we've broken up the organisation into segments that focus on particular types of customers, and those segments are led by that kind of extended leadership team that's in a similar way of design, tech, product, marketing and kind of customer sales, success, support, whatever works, that it's the pieces of that customer experience pulled together. Because we know in our world, we've watched drops in in our market perception that we can pretty closely tie to when we had some performance issues a few years ago. There's these kinds of pieces where you go, these are all playing out all the way along. How do we get better at pulling them all together And part of that's around that focus on measurement as well, because you get what you measure. What's often easiest for people to measure is commercial outcomes. So that's often what gets tracked and what's better. And so that's the piece in there, is to make that data more widely available so people can feel more ownership of the customer experience and get clearer on how it's going to go together. So there are some elements where there are people who are just directly held accountable for it in there. So, and it's often the design managers in segments that have that.
You mentioned it sounds like quite a collaborative process that you've got running there, and we've certainly seen that few organisations seem to be collaborating effectively. It's quite common for organisations to have quite siloed aspects to them, and that this seems to be a particular blocker for CX a lot of the time. How do you think organisations can succeed in cutting through that sort of siloed thinking that is often in the way of great customer experience?
I think I probably alluded to some of this before. Some of the things that we do at High Pages is we have a product showcase. So we've got 8-10 product teams that are building functionality that will get used by sales and service. And this doesn't replace internal go-to-market comms, but it's a chance to touch and feel and ask questions and play back what's happening. And we're about to kick off a company-wide showcase, which means that sales and service get to say the things that they're working on. So it's having people, again, it's advocates to drive the ability to try something new. I don't know whether these things are, or with the product showcase is long established, but the other ones, I don't know whether they'll work. We don't know, but we're going to have crack. And it's going to be great to hear what the other sides of the business are doing. And we are aligned that we have to do this for our customers. And the more within reason, the more appropriate forums where you've got people pulling together on the same type of objectives, the more we can bring those together, and we can spin them up. And then when they've served their purpose, we can shut them down. The better will be. I mean, we're going some unpopular things at the moment. Where you've got commercial realities. Sometimes you have to have a price change. Those changes typically aren't down, but they're the commercial realities. And how do we coordinate that across the business, pull in the same direction, and have the marketing comms work correctly, so that we're being realistic and authentic at the same time. Everyone has cost pressures. How do we deal with those? And I think that's an example of how you pull people together. Those people will be involved for a period of time. We're all talking about the customer experience throughout that process, which is delivering something that none of our customers are asking for. But it's a commercial reality. We need to be there for them tomorrow.
Yeah, we've gone specifically on the customer experience. We have leaned heavily into our experience designers for doing, because at the end of the day, it's design that cares most about the customer experience. I know now this is where we're going to get that point where we're going to disagree.
No, I'm thinking some marketing people who would go, I think they're awesome at crafting that too.
I think they are all, but I do, and they spend a lot of time in the customers' heads, and it's kind of their primary driver. So particularly because for many of our customer journeys, we have a range of them that are nice and neat and contained within kind of what we call our segments, and so you can manage it, and everyone's kind of got exactly the same goals, and it's optimized within that segment. That's nice. That's easy. That's right. But we've also got journeys that span segments and span our lines of business, that go completely across. We talk to Darren alluded to accountants, right? We have our accounts, we have big accounts, we have little accounts, but accountants have clients and their clients use our products. And so for those cross-functional journeys, we tend to put really strong leading designers into focusing on those journeys. And we're just going through one of those processes at the moment of negotiating how are we going to manage this particular end-to-end journey that crosses over. And we have a designer in our support and success functionality whose job is to also connect it up. So those people spend quite a bit of time talking together and working together to try and nail all the pieces in place and make sure we're not losing it. So that's how we tend to do it, as that way of bridging some of that silo. We actually lean into our designers to do it, and they help to facilitate some of the other conversations that need to happen. So now I'm going to have, like you, I'm going to go back to work, and now there's going to be a range of people who are going to yell at me and go, no, we do that as well. And it's like, okay, yeah, you should do, but, so it's always a challenge. Did that answer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I suppose changing tack slightly and taking us into the tough times theme, I suppose, that we've got for today. Some areas of the market are seeing, cuts in product and research and cuts to design teams. And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on, well, we sort of know why this is happening, but why particularly, product research and design teams might be getting cut. And what do you think might be the impacts that these shifts are going to have over the short, the medium, and the long term? What do you think is going to come out of some of that? Those cuts.
I'll tell you specifically because we came through it with very little cuts in the way of in that sort of recent thing, particularly in the product and design space. Yeah. And part of that's just where we were at as an organisation and everything in there. But part of it was, I think, what with product and design and research in particular, people lean into those skills when management has an idea. It's like an idea. We'll just do this fabulous thing, and it's like, oh, cool, right? Oh, okay. Well, we've got no way of delivering it, but let's have the next idea, right? And there's lots of work goes into all these different ideas, and product design and research kind of end up working a lot together. And I noticed this when I came into MYOB, and that I was dealing with a lot of very frustrated designers because they'd done this great research, they'd identified these great problems, but great ways to opportunities to do stuff, done on this, and then there was no way to actually get it delivered, to take it to market. And so it's like, and then they moved on to the next one. That's really frustrating for everybody. And I think what a lot of the downturn around was, and that sort of pulling in is as just money got tighter, and a lot of it was also just money got tighter. People had to really focus on what they could get out and valuable into customers' hands. And so all this kind of just exploring things, stuff that was interesting, maybe not urgent, maybe not impactful, just kind of interesting, got cut away. So
the market moved from growth posture to profit posture then changes the way that organisations view that idea and exploration opportunity?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of growth, but I think it was also just people playing out ideas because they had the spare money to do it.
Sure.
Around, and some of it was not particularly well focused. It wasn't brought back to, well, what are those underlying customer needs? It was much more blue sky, kind of, and a lot more. Some of the stuff that I've heard around, it's sort of much more kind of ego-driven almost in there, or latest buzzword-driven. And so I think a lot of that and product and design and research sort of play a lot in that space. And so
I think, Darren said before, to embrace your constraints. So perhaps when sometimes you've got the space to go and explore ideas, and if businesses in general are moving from more expansionary to retention, like what can we do to retain rather than attract new business, they might do things like cut marketing and focus more on the people they've got and try and retain their market share. If that's, I'm sure that there may be people out here that know a lot more about being involved in an organisation going through that than I do, but if that's the case, I think it just makes us in product and design redouble back down on lean design. What is the smallest thing of value? How fast can we deliver? Do we have to know the answer to that? How much discovery is enough? And I think you can sharpen your skills in that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. you have to kind of look at, well, what's that way that we can get to that value, and can we just not start stuff unless we've got a clear
Path to delivery.
possibility, that clear path to delivery, even if the path is, oh cool, we can see a way of making a team clear if it turns out that this does actually match the hypothesis, as opposed to let's find the hypotheses and then worry about how we'll actually take it all the way through. So I think it's getting that more coordinated across the piece. I think that
So it brings
more
focus?
important. Absolutely, yeah. It brings the focus. I mean,
Focus makes life easier, I reckon.
I had a great boss once who really drilled into me the idea that you should never let the crisis go to waste. You know, there is always opportunity, and I think, you know, coming from a design background as well, that being set with a white sheet of paper can be very, very difficult. You know, to find focus and to find direction. So there is that opportunity to, you know, to use it to advantage, right?
Exactly. I mean, I'd go, design is all about constraints, otherwise it's art, really.
I love it. I love it. Oh, so philosophical. Wonderful. Well, look, I think we might throw it open to the audience in the room and online via Slido at this point. So if you could jump back on Slido, I'll just jump in here and see what we've got happening in terms of our question set.
This is always the more tricky bit because, you know...
Well, you never
don't
know what
what's
you're
coming.
going to get. Yeah.
It's all unfiltered.
Yeah, I'm looking to you to answer all the hard ones.
All right. All right, so question for hipages. As a marketplace connecting tradies with clients...
We're posting jobs and our tradies who want to find jobs. We want to do everything we can to maximise the experience wherein someone posts a job and they get 3 claims. That's our nirvana, and you know, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes more people want that, want claims than we can provide, and sometimes some consumers post a job that no one claims. So we're always trying to balance that equation, and we try to look at it from both perspectives. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that's great, and I'd play it over to you as well, perhaps. Maybe not for hipages, but in your own business, you have a lot of different customers as well. So it's a multi-sided marketplace in some ways. Would you describe it that way, or like how do you play it off?
Yeah, it is. It's interesting how we play off the needs, and it's a question we continually struggle with. Right. And we do, because as you know, with business, it's 30 years in that world, and so we have people who have been with us for that 30 years, but also our heritage has moved very much in that accounting and bookkeeping space, but as more and more of that has become digitised and automated and connected through, we've seen more and more of a demand from businesses, but businesses are still clients of accountants who are our customers. So it's this 3-way triangle that we've got going continually, and it's I will just go, it is always a juggle and always a need because of what might meet our, say, you know, our direct business owner needs is not as the same as what will work for our accountants and bookkeeper needs, which may, and yeah. So how do we balance it off? A lot of discussion, a lot of looking at kind of behaviours, a lot of looking at numbers, a lot of trying things out and going, is that working or is that not working? And then you throw into it the marketplace and the ecosystem and this whole positioning of a desire and I think a role that we can play in being small medium businesses, sort of almost IT arm, you know, which plays out through your ecosystem and your marketplace and all those third parties. So of course there's that pulling in as well. So yeah, sorry, there's no easy answer. It's a continual kind of keeping an eye on all the pieces and how they move against each other.
A constant thought project.
A constant thought project.
You mentioned automation at one point in there. We've got a question here.
Is it the AI one again?
Well, you know that we're headed in that direction one way or another. How much does automation play in CX currently, and do we think that the future of CX is chatbots?
You've recently done some implementation, have you?
Yeah.
How did that go?
So we have a chatbot across our site, and in various instances, We do a bit of it into our product and the whole piece in there. And it has been an interesting ride putting that in, and just looking at it and going, because we have very, like, you know, I keep alluding to it, but don't get me wrong, it is complicated products with, and people ask us all sorts of like really, really specific things, and it's like, oh, a chatbot's not going to answer that. So in fact, what we've done is, in that whole world, is look at what are the kinds of needs people have, what are then the tools and the mechanisms and the channels that we can help to answer people by, and how do we create a seamless flow between those pieces. So I think chatbots are really great, particularly if they can seamlessly slide you into an actual person when it becomes too specific and too useful. And we've seen a great benefit to our customers, and a lot of their questions have been answered through that. So we track, you know, fallout rates and off there to go what's working, what's not. Do I see them as being the complete answer to our business? No. Do I see them helping, and in case we get to that question, let me frame, machine learning and AI answering and dealing with some of our problems? Yes. And we're you know,
well, you just invoked the genie.
I did. I let it out of the bottle.
Well, I actually think it's really interesting to think about, you know, the why we would choose to use AI to, you know, in our CX, and I like to think that that there's an opportunity to sort of augment the humanity of our experiences by taking that stuff that's really hard and repetitive for especially people like customer service to do, and freeing those people up to do much more human, much more empowered things with our customers to really drive brand differentiation, really make it more human where it really matters.
I got a perspective on that. We've had a couple of plays. Now, we haven't touched the chatbot side yet, but there's a couple of things that we've done in that ML space, I would say, rather than AI. And like, why would you involve it? Well, one of the things that we do is we price our jobs, price our leads. And sometimes we have too many people trying to claim this one, and, you know, not enough over there. And so we do have an ML model which tries to balance that. Not tries to, really successfully balances that. Drives up the number of claims that we've got, drives the value we receive as an organisation, and increases the customer experience who's posting the job, because more of them get more claims. Like, it literally wins on every box. Right. So that's a success we've had. To get there hasn't been easy, and it's not over. But that's one area. But also, talking about experience as well. People, when they write in varying degrees of succinctness, structure, and not everyone has English as their first language. So, and even those who do sometimes don't write particularly well. So we do use a summarise function to take what people write in a description and summarise it and provide that through, and that results in a meaningful percentage increase in our claims. It makes things more attractive, and that's CX. That's making things more attractive through ML.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Fantastic. How are we going for time at this point? We good? Fantastic. Let's move over to design. So, question here from Sylvia. Does design sit at the table when big strategic decisions are made in your business? And how do you think that plays in delivering outcomes to your customers?
So I would go, in certain forums it does. So for instance, I sit with our heads of product, and that's where we decide on what the product strategy is. Yes. In those segments, so I would go, we spend a lot of time actually getting design into decision-making roles across MYOB. It's normally as part of that collaborative team, and often in that whole classic product design tech world. So I suppose it depends on what strategy and in which way. You know, like, we don't get a lot involved in the our employee experience strategies too much.
Right.
You know,
okay.
We could, but we don't.
Should we?
Should we? Well, then you get into the whole thing about organisational design, and it is still design. So I would go, definitely not the experienced designers don't, but I am sure actually organisational designers do get involved. In fact, I know they do. They just don't fall under my remit. Does it change? Yeah, it does, actually. It changes some of the ways, and I think one of the big things that design brings to those kinds of discussions is often a different lens that we see the world through. Design tends to look at the world from an outside-in perspective, and a lot of the other people in those conversations look at it from an inside-out when you're talking about the organisation. So they're coming from an organisational viewpoint, looking out onto the customer, and design, because of the nature of what we do, and that kind of often takes that looking from the customer in. So you come up with different thoughts, different ways of approaching, you look at the world through a different, and that's really good. We all know that diversity of thought in teams and in decision making is important, and will end up with better decisions. So I'll go. It depends. Can I be a real designer and go, it depends?
As far as how, where is design involved, and I wear a product hat, not a design hat. It doesn't mean that I maybe shouldn't speak on behalf of design. But in our structure,
I feel free to speak on behalf of the product. So
well, you've worn that hat. But we have a chief product officer who's C-suite. He's got to wear that hat of design and product in key strategic decisions. So that starts at the top. We work through an OKR structure, which we continue to iterate on. But that means that in a perfect world, teams have got the ability to find their own solutions, even determine which type parts of the problem they're going to work on, work out their own solutions, and design. For almost every team has design components. Some internal may not. If you're working with Salesforce, that might not work, but they have that ability to choose and fight for what they believe in as well, and bring that information up. So I think information doesn't flow downhill all the time. It's got to come bottom up. It's both, and I think if you've got the right culture, then that influence can flow through both ways.
Right. Perhaps we'll move on to the key areas of focus for improving customer experience. What does it look like for hipages and MYOB?
Well, on behalf of MYOB, improving. Can you repeat the question?
What are your key areas of focus on when you come to improve customer experience? What do you really want to work on?
Well, some of it is trust. I mentioned before, that's one of the things that it's not one of the things. It's the thing that we're aiming for, to be the most trusted partner. So, across everything, you can always ask that question. So some of the things that we've done recently is making sure, is building out that's going to be launched a new complaints process. That doesn't sound particularly exciting, but if you've got a problem with your product or your package or whatever it is, then you should be able to address that, and that's customer experience. It's not going to be something which is likely to be a revenue generating activity, but it's part of a package. Making sure that when we renew people, we've got the right communications in place. We've gone through that recently and made sure that that's being done in a really good way. But then, as I mentioned before, like the more strategic side, bringing our two apps together, which is a much bigger piece of work, probably a multi-year piece of work, is a focus on the more strategic side of it, where we want to be in 2, 3, 4 years' time.
And for us, a call centre that's there, and nobody wants to dial up anybody and talk to anybody really at midnight. So we know that to do that, we actually have to sort out tweaks in the product. Can we fix it in the product first? No. Well, then what's the next piece? Can we deal with it through our digital channels? Can we deal, through help? Can we deal? So it drives a whole bunch of improvements all the way through that funnel to just enable people to do the work that they want to do and to get it done, because no one got into being a florist so they could do the accounting, and
Sure enough.
no one got into building things so that they could write invoices and all of this sort of piece. So how do we make that super simple for them all the way down for when they're they fall out of being able to do it in product because it becomes too hard. Well, what's the next piece that we can support? What's the next piece? What's the next piece? So that's for us.
Well, speaking of the next piece, Anonymous again.
They're very prolific.
They are prolific. Asks, how do you go beyond what customers need today? Many successful products didn't have a clear ROI at creation. How do we go beyond, what customers really need today, or think they need today, perhaps?
One way you can do it is identify a place in the market that you don't operate. Is it like an expansion play? It's to build more things or build things better. I'm not sure of another way to think of it.
Yeah, there are, for me, there are two ways. I mean, one of the things that we're kind of looking at, because accountants and bookkeepers are our bread and butter. Well, what does accounting look like going forward? As we've seen it become more digitized and elements have become more commoditized. What does it look like? So I think it's almost taking that customer base that you think is interesting and is your own, and look out and go, well, what's the future like for them? How do we try and move into places where we can help them to move to that future or deal with some of those challenges? And some of it is just keeping track of what you're doing now and seeing things that look odd and anomalies, and go, wow, is this something that we should explore more of? Because sometimes things, the classic example, of course, is SMS, that all gets raised, where nobody thought about it. It was just a thing, and it just kind of took off. It was solving one particular problem, but it became so useful for a whole range of other things. And so I suppose that's also part of it, is keeping an eye on what it is that you've got and looking for those anomalies, which comes back almost to that whole measuring of the customer experience and keeping track of your customers.
Does that come back to that, broadening or improving? Do you think?
If you be a bit more disciplined about it, then I think people went down some rabbit holes in there of having been in there, and making and going. How much are you willing to bet on it?
I have. I mean, as a consultant with Thoughtworks, you get to see a lot of different companies and look broadly across the industry. I really think there's a great opportunity for organisations to look to what's happening in completely separate industries, to see what you can actually take from what's happening with customers in completely different realms, and think about what that could actually mean for your customers, things that haven't been thought of yet. I think that's a great and really very simple way to understand where there are still pockets where you can innovate within your own product, within your own industry, by bringing stuff in that perhaps already exists but just hasn't been identified for your users yet. And you'll see, but that is also, I think, the place where customers start to build expectations of your products.
Absolutely.
From the other apps or experiences that they're getting in other parts of their lives, and that you really do have to keep a handle on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the days where you can look just merely to, say, your immediate competitors and see what they're doing and go, oh no, we need to meet that or do that, are long past, because everyone has a whole landscape of kind of competitors sitting in their pocket at any point in time and what they're doing.
True enough. Yeah. All right. So I think that we might close questions at this point. So what have we got here? Here we are. So firstly, just in starting to wrap up, I'd like to thank you both for joining us and talking about all things CX today. Thank you very much, Megan and Graham, for joining us, if we could.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for the invite.
And just before we start to close things out, firstly, if you'd like to read more about the most effective ways to drive impact in CX, do hit this QR code that you see on screen at the moment, or search the web for Thoughtworks Transforming Customer Experience Inside and Out. This is a fantastic report that I was very lucky to be able to collaborate on, and well worth the read. That's our collaboration with HPR. And secondly, before we go, I want to draw your attention also to YConf, which is taking place this September, on September 14th. And YConf is a Thoughtworks annual conference for leaders and practitioners working in customer experience, in product, and in design at the intersection of where that comes together with technology. This year's focus is on developing and inspiring high-performing product teams and developing the know-how for building organisations that can deliver great products, time after time. During the day, YConf will be streamed live across APAC, and then in the evening we have a series of local meetups that you can come along to, and I would encourage you to do so. In Australia, these will be in Thoughtworks Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne offices, and this will include a panel of discussion with CX domain experts and other thought leaders as well. It's a great chance to connect and network with your CX industry peers, and so please do come along to that. Just scan the barcode, the QR code on your screen to register now, or you can search for YConf Australia 2023 in your browser. And with that, I thank you all very much, and I'll just hand back to Karen.
Thank you, Luke. We're coming to the end of our week-long festival exploring the intersection of technology and business today. And this session now concludes the festival for this year. You can catch up on everything we've covered this week as we've been recording the sessions. So look out for your email with the information about it. I would like to thank Darren, Megan, Graham and Luke for sharing your insights this afternoon. Thanks so much to the more than 1,200 people who participated in one way or another this week. And last but not least, I would like to thank the people who organized the festival. Of course, as you can imagine, a lot of effort goes into it and to pull it off. And I would like to single out one person who has been the absolute powerhouse behind it all. Angela, come. Thank you so much. It's been a huge effort.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
And that's the end of the festival for now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.